more to be discovered as we look at stewardship. We opened up this particular text dealing with the context or the background of these particular verses. The background is in Matthew chapter 24, they asked Jesus, when shall these things be, and when shall the end be? And Jesus answers them in Matthew chapter 24. And then over in Matthew chapter 25 and kind of 26, he tells them what they ought to be doing while they are waiting on his return.
All right.
He wanted them to understand you need to be working while you're waiting. You need to be serving while you are waiting. He gives 3 illustrations. He deals with the 5 foolish virgins and the 5 wise virgins. And then he deals with this particular text, the talents. But he's also, in this text, is going to deal with the fact that there's going to be a time of separation between the goats and the sheep. A time where God is going to separate those who have been faithful and those who have rejected him. I wanted to look at this particular text. I thought I had it and pulled out all of the truths, but I wanted to look at this last man, the one who was given one. It's really who I want to focus on, because the story is about a master who leaves town and he leaves his servants or his slaves in charge. He gives them a sum of money. He gives them a sum of money based on their abilities. And he tells them really to occupy or to be busy while he is gone. And he tells them that he's going to return, but he doesn't tell them when he's going to return. And so he leaves them in charge, and he gives them money according to their ability. He sees that one man has extraordinary ability. He gives him 5 talents. One has just ordinary ability. He gives him 2 talents. And one has limited ability, so he gives him 1. And he gives them a talent based upon their ability. But I want to look at this last man, because you need to look closer in verse number 24. Because there's a lot said, there's a lot spoken, there's a lot to learn, because this man is going to be, his works are going to be examined, his time is going to be examined, his stewardship is going to be examined. He's going to be looked at by the master to examine what he was doing while the master was away. The master would eventually return, and he would want an accountability of their stewardship. As I look at this verse, I've discovered a couple of things that we need to take from this particular story. You better look carefully, you better look deeply at your own life, your own existence, because this is a metaphoric story, it's a parable. It is a story told by Jesus, and it really mirrors life. The way life is, the way life is set up, the way life works out. It's all in this text. And I'm afraid that some of us are not like the one with 5 talents, nor like the one with 2 talents, but we're like the one who is given 1 talent. Boy, my brothers and sisters, if you could look at this one man with this 1 talent to see how he handled what was given to him based on his ability, you will discover that some of us are not being good stewards of what God has given us. 3 things that I want you to consider as we look at this particular text. You better get this, because life is unpredictable. Life is uncertain. Life just doesn't have any guarantees. Let me give you this. First of all, you need to understand this. God is the giver of life. That if you have life, it was given to you by God. God owns your life. God is the giver of your life. You're here because of him. Your life is God's life. Your life was given to you by God. Because if you read the text closely, he was a slave, not really a servant. The word in Greek I told you was doulos. He was a slave of his master. In his very existence, he owed it to his master. His life was in his master's hands. His existence was based upon his master's will. And you're here because of God. Boy, if I had time, I'd break this down to you. You only get one life. And you only get one lifetime to live it in. You only get one life. And I know you used to listen to that old quartet song, this is a dress rehearsal. This ain't no dress rehearsal. You got one life, and you got one lifetime to live it in. And I'm telling you, this young man who had to give an account of his stewardship, he had one opportunity. And he had one opportunity in a certain amount of time to take full advantage. But when the master came back, he was not a good steward of his time. But not only that, his ability was given to him by God. Not only his life, but his ability. The master determined what he was to be in charge of, what was to be under his stewardship. God gives us these gifts, these talents, these abilities based upon our abilities. Now listen, there is a phrase that God will not put more on you than you can bear. That's not true when it comes to troubles, because he will give you more than you can bear. But it is not true. God only gives you abilities based upon your ability to carry out responsibilities. And I was reading the book of Ephesians. Ephesians is the handbook of the church. And what that book, Ephesians, says is that he gives out gifts to the body of Christ. We are many members of one body. And each member has a level of giftedness to help the body to be effective in carrying out the work. We are fully equipped for the work of Christ. All of us have been given some kind of ability. We've been given some kind of talent so that we could be effective in helping the church to be all that it can be, to help humanity to be all that it can be. I'm trying to tell you that your life has been given to you by God, and your abilities, if you're able to be successful on your job, is because God enables you. If you are a successful chemist, if you are a successful day worker, if you are a successful lawyer, judge, doctor, yard man, any of that ability, God has given that to you. And then I need to tell you this before I dissect this particular text. Because I need to tell you, any possessions you have been given by God. You don't own nothing. You don't own nothing. I'm going to preach 2 sermons in this series. I'm not going to preach them today, but I'm going to preach them in this series about stewardship. I'm going to talk about, in one sermon series, giving everything. And that's the rich young fool in Luke chapter 12. And then I'm going to talk about everything taken away. And that's Job. Because I want you to understand that if you have anything, God gave it to you. That you are really the owner of nothing. And Job had to realize that. And Job came to that realization because he said, for the Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. And Job came to a further conclusion. He says, naked I came into this world, and naked shall I. Let me tell you something. You came with nothing, you leaving with nothing. And And the stuff that you have while you're here, you only have it temporarily. And you are a steward of it. But you came into this world naked, and naked shall you return. You came into this world with nothing, and you shall leave with nothing. And really, the old church was right. Only what you do for Christ will last. Any possessions you have them because God has given them to you. And I really have this idea to explain to you the perspective. God ain't mad that you got stuff. Because stuff makes life a little more convenient, make life better, make life more comfortable. Because I don't care what anybody says. I'm glad to live in America where they got air conditioning. I'm glad to live in America where we got grocery stores. I'm glad to live in America where I can own my own transportation, go where listen, it's good to have the modern conveniences of life. And so God is not frowning because you got stuff, but God frowns based on how you feel about the stuff you got. Your life belongs to God. Your abilities are given by God. And the stuff you have belongs to God. I never will forget that Jet magazine article a long time ago. It's been years when I used to collect them jets for the centerfold of the week. I have them posted all over my wall. There was an article in that Jet magazine of a man who wanted to be buried in his Cadillac. But let me tell you something, that didn't mean nothing. It was more for the folks standing on top of the ground than it was the person put in the ground. Because that Cadillac didn't mean nothing. It was just a casket for him to be buried in, because after death, you carry nothing with you. And the Egyptians believed the reasons why they built the pyramids was because in the afterlife, they wanted to make sure that the Pharaoh had all that he needed in the afterlife. So they built these elaborate pyramids, and they put all of these treasures in there. And sometimes they would bury his wives and his children in the pyramid with him, because he needed all of that in the afterlife. But I'm telling you, my brothers and sisters, Job said, naked I came into this world, and naked shall I return. Everything you have is temporary. And at death, it means let me give you this, because I'm telling you, it's amazing how we, and you'll never have a right understanding about stewardship till you understand your life belongs to him, any ability you have belongs to him, and any possession, even the money, I ain't got none. But it says, in God we trust. It all belongs to him. Boy, I'm fascinated of the stuff Jesus said, and I'm just talking. Jesus said this: you better be careful of putting too much confidence in things that rust and moth will eventually take. I don't care what you got. It's going to get old. The rust and moth will eventually overtake it. It's not yours, it belongs to God. And if I really wanted to hurt your feelings, I can tell you, it's not yours, it belongs to God. And when you die, it's going to belong to somebody else. This man with one talent. And I really want you to see this in verse 24, because he had the same opportunity, but he didn't do anything with it. He had the same access, but he didn't take advantage of it. And look at what the text says, because it's really interesting. You really have to really look at verse 24, because when the master came to him for him to give an accountability of his stewardship, verse 24 says he went for his master. And he said to the master, Lord, I knew you were a hard man, You reap where you've not sown. You gather where you have not scattered any seed. And really what he did, he put the focus on his master instead of himself. He wanted to talk about what the master didn't do. And let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, and really you have to understand it in this way. Sometimes you think life is unfair. Life has given you a raw deal because you don't have everything you want. And so many people are trying to live life based on what they want instead of what they have. You'll never be able to live life with success, living life based on what you want instead of what you have. You got to look at sometimes what is right in front of you. He had something. He didn't have what the next man had, what another man had, but he had something. And you'll never be successful in life if you always focus on what other people have instead of what you got. See, that's a fundamental flaw in living life with success. And understanding, because listen, nobody who started out rich other than Donald Trump started out rich, but they started with something. And they kept building, and they kept building, and they kept building. They took their ability and they built wealth. They built and became successful. And listen, everything that is big starts small. This fella, it's a shame he started attacking his master. And verse 25 says, he says, I was afraid. Afraid of what? He was afraid of losing, and so he didn't even try. I'm trying to explain something to you. And listen, you might think this is deep, but it really ain't deep. Because let me tell you, fear will keep you from even trying. Trying. He says, I was afraid. You know why he couldn't do anything to gain anything? Because he was afraid. And fear will keep you from even trying. Fear will keep you from even taking a chance. Fear will keep you from even stepping out on faith. Let me tell you, you cannot allow fear to overtake you. Because let me tell you, he says, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I was afraid. And so he had the normal reaction of fear. So he said, I went and hid. He didn't do anything with what he had, because fear had overtaken him. And I'm going to explain to you. I don't have time to explain to you. But listen, fear will paralyze you. Fear will make you stay in the same place, make you spin your wheels, and never move forward. So many of us don't realize that God has given us so much, but we live in fear. I love Dr. Nat King Carter says, as a Christian, you got to get some holy arrogance and some holy boldness if you're going to live this Christian life. You can't be afraid to fail, because failure is how you succeed. Let me tell you, if you fail, try and try and try again. Don't ever give up. Don't ever let fear paralyze you. Don't ever let fear overtake you, because the fear of failure is the ladder to success. You criticize Donald Trump all you want to, but Donald Trump says it wasn't the 99 times he failed, but it was the one time he succeeded. Because if he'd have quit the 98 times, the 99 times, the one time that he succeeded, you got to allow fear. He said, I was afraid. And so I went and hid your talent. in the ground. And I'm explaining to some of you, you got to move beyond fear. Because I tell you, fear will grip you. Fear will hold you back. You want to know what's holding you back? And I really don't have time to explain to you, but some of us really can't get what God wants us to have because we are afraid of the unfamiliar. We don't want to go into the unknown. We don't want to step into any new territory. We don't want anything that's new, that's different, because we become so complacent with what's familiar to us. But you know, beyond, out in the great blue yonder, there are new opportunities, there are new vistas, there are new things. We get so caught up in the familiar. We're scared to move forward. We're scared to do anything different. Some people are trapped because they're so used to the familiar. I'm teaching and I know I'm about to knock on some of y'all's door. Because you know the pastor's quote, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always have what you've always had. If you want what you've never had, you got to do what you've never done. You got to move beyond the familiar, and sometimes you got to step outside your comfort zone. You're so afraid to fail because you're so acquainted with the familiar. And this is what I really want to tell you. This one man who was given one talent, he was afraid. But you know what the other two did? They gambled everything. They risked everything. They put everything on the line, and guess what? It paid off. You got to be willing to risk it all. I'm trying to explain to you, fear will make you hide. Fear will make you paralyzed. And I'm going to tell you, this is what the text really teaches, and I'm trying to explain this to you in a real dignified way. This dude went and took his money, dug a hole, and buried it. And when he buried it, he went on living his life, and while it was buried, he did absolutely nothing. You know the reason why you can't have anything? Because you ain't doing nothing. We live in a time, in a generation where people want something for nothing. They want success without any effort. They want success without any commitment. Success without taking any risk. What you need, you have buried it. This man buried it, and then he went on doing nothing. Just doing nothing. He was doing nothing. His talent was buried. He was doing absolutely nothing. And then when his master came back, you know what he did? His master said, "Where's my money?" And the master said in the text, "Where's my increase?" He said, "Follow me." He went to where he buried it. And as he was digging, imagination suggests he's talking to his master. And he's a digging, thinking that his master's going to be proud that he took the money that he was given, and he thought that the master was going to congratulate him. The master was going to say kind things to him. He was just a digging and just a talking. And thinking that his master was going to say, "Well done." He finally got it out of the ground and said, "Here, I didn't want to lose it, so I buried it. I didn't want to lose what you gave me, so I buried it." And look what the master said. "You could have taken my money and put it on deposit and at least gained some interest." The minimum you could have done was let my money work for me if you wasn't willing to work. That's something I could really talk about, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. Because a whole lot of folks, Mr. Sistrunk said it last week, I can't work, but my money can work to get some things done. I'm telling you, we are in a generation of people who want everything but don't want to do anything, don't want to put any effort into success. This, he literally says to his master, I buried him. One of the quotes I've heard that I love, the cemetery is full of dead people, but you know what the cemetery is also full of? Is regrets. Because people didn't take advantage of the life they were given in the one lifetime they were given it. You know, if you're not successful, you can't look at mama and daddy, your sisters, your brothers, the economy, the government, the church. You got to knock on your own front door. There is no reason why you shouldn't be successful. You've been given a life, you've been given an ability, and you have the ability to make money. And now let me bring this on to the church, because I'm telling you, so many of us don't realize that we are doing nothing. We've taken the abilities God has given us. It might not have been what I can do. You might not can preach. You might not can sing. But you have the ability to do something. You bury it. And then when Jesus comes back, you want to go where it is and take it out of the ground and say to him. And really, to give it back to the master wasn't what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to use it for his good and for his master's glory. God has given some of us great ability. Great ability. Great resources. Has given us a great opportunity. Let me give you this. God has put you where you can grow and where others can grow because you grow. You're planted right where God wants you to be. You're in the fertile ground God wants you to be in, and that's where he wants you to grow. Do you not know one corn seed can produce one stalk with 3 ears with hundreds of kernels? I tell you, sometimes I have to go up and clean up off the top of my house. And you know what I discovered? Wherever a seed falls, that's where a seed grows. And I was amazed how seeds were growing in my gutters. And how grass was growing in my gutters. And there was some small trees, seedlings growing in my tree. Because wherever a seed falls is where a seed can grow. And listen, wherever God puts you in life, that's where you're supposed to be planted. That's where you're supposed to grow. And don't let where you've been planted keep you from growing. Yes, the environment is tough, but grow. Yes, it don't get enough rain, but grow. Yes, it's in an unlikely place where not a lot is planted, but grow. I had time I'd explain to you what happens in the Arizona desert. Arizona desert is not a place where plants really can grow, but they do grow. But the only thing that grows in the Arizona desert is a cactus. But the cactus is smart enough to store water because it knows water might not always. And then most vegetation has to worry about animals coming feeding off of them and eating them. But a cactus has an ingenious idea. It grows thorns to protect. I'm trying to say something you don't even hear. It grows in a tough environment because it's prepared to be in that environment. It stores up, so it needs the energy. It has resources to protect it on the inside. But it has thorns to protect it on. Because it knows if it wants to grow in the desert, it needs See, that's the problem. You ain't got enough water to sustain you during the desert and hot time. And then you ain't got enough thorns to protect you when the enemy is from the outside. Because let me tell you something. Listen, you get discouraged sometimes from within. You get drained, but sometimes you get attacked from the outside. But if you're like a cactus, you can survive. And it's amazing how cactus can reproduce themselves. It takes a long time for a cactus to grow, but if that cactus can get its seeds pollinated and a bird to eat it, and that bird defecates and that cactus can grow somewhere else. But all it has to do is to survive its environment, survive attack and store, and it can grow. I'm trying to explain to you, you got a short time, one lifetime to live it in. Do something that can send up some timber. I'm closing. Got to baptize at the other church, but so let me go on and close this out. Because he says the Son of Man, in verse 32, and I'm closing. Because all nations will gather before him, and he will separate one from. See, listen, it's a day of separation coming. That ain't going to happen until we all get there. It ain't going to happen before. But when we all get to heaven, when all nations gather before him, he will separate one from the other. As a shepherd that disperses or divides the sheep from the goats. And listen, this is shouting stuff, and I'm almost finished. He will set the sheep at his right hand. And you know that's where he is. He's on the right hand of the Father. The goats on his left hand. And I'm telling you, there's a day of separation coming. And then Jesus says something profound in the text, because he's going to speak to the opportunity they had in order to serve him, to give to humanity, to exercise their stewardship. And you look at what Jesus says in this text. It gives you a warning, an admonition. You need to be busy doing something. Look at what he says, and I'm closing. He says, for when I was hungry, you gave me food. That's what he's saying to the sheep. Thirsty, you gave me drink. A stranger, you took me in. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you visited me. In prison, you came unto me. And I will say, you righteous God. And all this conversation, and Jesus is going to say, when you done it to the least of them, you done it into me. But then he's going to say in verse 41, with you who are that's on the left, he's going to say, depart from me, ye cursed, into eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For when I was hungry, you gave me no food. Thirsty, you gave me no drink. Stranger, you didn't take me in. Naked, you didn't clothe me. Sick and in prison, you did not visit me. I'm telling you, we got stewardship. There is a day of reckoning coming. There is a day of accountability coming. You better get busy, get in a hurry while the blood still running warm in your veins. Because you can look big down here and be small over there. You can look like you on the top over here. And I'm telling you, Jesus says there is a day of separation coming. And you can do something about whether you're on his right or on his left right now. You can get in a hurry and get busy serving the Lord. Because I'm telling you that serving the Lord will pay off after a while. You might have to serve by yourself. You might have to serve